Last thing I told George to carry the and the Tarb quarter.
Yeah, so today's topic is about what we call renunciation or the strong resolution to get free from suffering.
Last thing, na Jirumboche, Lansu Nasam Nani, Nijon Geshe Sholoka Samiore, Tejachi.
Yeah, so today we are going to discuss about this topic based on Geshe Rangrig text, the three principal aspects of the path, and particularly more about we are going to do this class based on three verses of this text.
Last
3 verses of this text.
Tanda Gedoni Lansu Nasam Zat, Nachu Nani Shepilam Kisu, some Shigore, Ninjon, the Tancho Kusem, Tombani Topishiram Nangatin Chigre.
Yes, so what does it mean, the three principal aspects of the path? So when we say the three principal aspects of the path, we mean the three principal aspects of the Buddhist path, which are the renunciation or the strong determination to get free from suffering, the view of emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness, and the bodhicitta. Yes, bodhicitta.
Tang Ninjon Zat, good dear Richishena, Carrezeti. So, Gangali attorney that Tarbalia topu Samlo Narma, the Nichil Jacore.
Yes, so in order to explain the idea of renunciation or the strong determination to get free from suffering in an easy way, so we can think of kind of a clear mind, like a mind which is in its natural state, wanting to having the desire or the wish to be free from the problems or the suffering.
Tani, Tanzo Chukelenin, Marchesa, the Kelen de Gore, Dinga Kanga Tamali Tarnita, Deke, Tarbazi, Nachuna, Tarbaja, or Julijambaka, Tanija Origin, Chukemelin Kachina, Tanji Tarbazia, Chichi, Tovias Kelen Goma, Shasona, Taratini, Samja, Tanije.
Yes, so as for people who practice different spiritual traditions, so they have this kind of term which is called liberation. We can also call it nirvana if you want to refer to it more specifically. And for people who are not engaging in spiritual practice or in religious practice, so usually they assert that you just die, you pass away, and that's it. There is no such thing such as nirvana or liberation.
Last Tanitandi Namdangem John may person so you demji to Nejivita Mela, Sella Kamba Jalichan, Kunichan, Shertoman, Yem John Tarzini, Sholoka Tombo Tere. Namdangem John may person so easy. Titanga to enjoy your pochimena, not so Sansoziat, Nagit Korazi de Ore. Kangali Tari Tabi or Maret, Sons and Nenjon Zeat, Kangali Tapi, Sound Logo Jessa Yona Menachirela.
Okay, so we are going to read the first verse. Without pure renunciation, there is no means to pacify the yearning for the joys and fruits of the samsaric ocean, and the craving for existence chain us thoroughly. At first, search for true renunciation. So, renunciation, as we said, this is the wish to be free from the suffering, and we cannot have we cannot be free from the suffering if we don't have this type of minds. And therefore, this type of mind which wants to get free from the suffering is something which is extremely necessary. Also, there is what is called samsaric ocean. We refer it just to the samsara.
Tanda Sella Kamba Jalichana Kunichan, Chatomangim Jotaziting. So, Gangen on the Tsedea the Karaziti, Gangi, Likatoni, Gangel Sakan Gani, Yo, Marta Leka, Lecho Toma, Gangi. John Satel Gatrocini Gude or is Coral Chade or is Coal Sapakes in a Carze Coreta. Not so Pena Michi Zonkan all Junity on a quote Zonkan all cannot unit the Toaki Podu Sani Telichapakes on and it's Zonkani Tando Savani in Kumaro, Tenajang, some Coal Jadoni Kangetel Mando Palayon, Coal Nesumombo, Chilejan Chacheni Tema de at the Telitardo Casano Chuni Meadu, Ani.
Yes, so as for the second part of the verse, and the craving for existence chain us thoroughly, at first search for true renunciation. So in general, there is no one who is wishing for suffering or any type of problem, but still like we have like a lot of attachment and a lot of desire to the different things in samsara and the cyclic existence, and therefore this is what kind of chain us to this cyclic existence. We can also give the example of someone who is in prison. So if someone who is in prison, so in general no one wants to be in prison, but if someone doesn't have the wish to get out of the prison, or that he kind of likes what's the things in prison, so he won't be able to be released from the prison. So therefore, the first thing that one should do is to search for this type of mind of renunciation, which wants to be free from the cyclic existence.
That's what I ta. So now you go on all Nathan Road the Karchin and so Tomago Kangilitan, Secondo Payoma, Kangindo Yomata, Kangi, Tachi, Talo, Tachi. Panjon rawachin quadrupche, Tanji checking your Corsan rawachi, Tanji Yapochi Jona, Saint Ganica Likapon rawachi, younger Samnit, and Basso Telechegore, Teleche Valatini, Malajambala, Napoche, Yojin Transam Cheva, so which et and Dopandram Racheni Leka, Tikamombo Lenichi Pancho, Tanji Corsata, so which et son in Dorna. Koali Tartaku Saulochi, Matani, and Koan on Kuri Rambana, so solidate you want take on Wokorni Deore.
Yeah, so usually how we spend our lives, by mainly thinking of the kind of benefit of this life, how we can benefit ourselves during this life, by kind of trying to gather like the best companions, or like to have a very, very good wealth and a lot of material things and so forth. And in order to gain these things, so we engage in different kind of actions, which are sometimes they are negative, right? So this is usually how we spend our lives, by engaging in this type of thing. We don't really pay a lot of attention and the proper attention to the sort of getting rid from suffering, or to that kind of the more superior thought to be free from the cyclic existence of samsara.
Sonsa Tanda Nabjang Natso Saulo, Soaki Tonti, Saulo, the Doki Tamlam Cario Resina, Tombo Tendel, Genchamachi, Tanjonia Catzella Lome, Piela Combat Sendi Nashi Dosonre, Carizetinazzo, the Nindichi Saulo, the Matsendela Saulo Chiton, and Atsu Matse Mil Li Corotoyati and Hacha, Calicapochi Race, Miseat, Patenan, Zamuli Tonjo Denchanashi, was over Mombon Chireta, but Troman the Chile Durna. Zambulingum Batromatan Bitromatan, Tanda Minica, Yachaga Bitroma Mongayore, Takin Gertan.
Okay, so in what kind of method we have in order to kind of avert or to dispel this type of mind? Just kind of preoccupied with these life affairs. So it is presented in the second verse, by cultivating in mind that this human life is so hard to find, yet has no time to spare. Preoccupation with this life will cease. So basically this type of verse is presenting the way to kind of refute or to negate this thought which always preoccupies with just the affairs and matters of this life. What is the reason? The reason is that, just like the verse says, we can think about the precious human life that we have. And moreover, not only that they are precious in terms of all the different conditions that we have, but also they are very rare to obtain. So if we have a look in our world, so in general, there are a lot of people, right? There are like 7 billion people in the world, right? But if we compare it to other animals, such as even ants, we are such small in comparison to these animals. So then we can see that our human life is very, very rare and hard to find.
Sama Hako de Gore, Sochan Ramanda Zamulina, Tenjimombochi opinion, Napio Cheshire to me in Bat, Sama Hako Gore, that say Arimbo, Diki and Seshini, Listin the Savachimbo Tenji Chatiore, Yenayan, Tenji Savach, that Tenji magically ten tops on Ayan, that's in the langalonga cheni ta so tsendi de ki tab tsam cheni yang jo kwali tarwi chu che samye ga tanji delita kombo shure anga to chunde jing so go tsenda tsamai ba tang de ki chi go samye ga samlo tani ha cha nyu kele ni nyu re.
Yes, and among of all the animals and all the creatures in this world, so we can say that human being, that people are the most intelligent one, and also have a lot of different potentials that are differentiated or extinguished from any other sentient beings or animals. But however, like if we look among humans, so those people who have really this kind of thought, which is not only engaged or thinking only about the benefit of this very life, but also for other life by thinking about Dharma and religious or spiritual practice and so forth, this is very, very rare.
Then combo chikta zawa chimbo mili chik top de yore tang tate jirimbo chik le savlo tang na ta tombo nga so ya keni pugun rawa chire chikama koni samlan rawa tang machine lo de ge kandro jare tani chi lo byon rawa che tani ya tani chi ti tse ze ya ta ha chang tong re gore ta tse rimbo chik de na lo gya ya ma tani chi mong de yo mare ta tse tong yin na pu yin di ni chong ro ya tani ya lo ni shi sam chi ka ya song di tangi li zawa chimbo Gerimbo chi pecho tango samna te pecho tang koka raya ta hacha kali khapon rawa tiso tiparu tiso dordina tiso tondo mato chi yo mari ze rimbo chi savlo to chi cha chimbo lo nga gya chi gya ta gya tanji tena kale chi che ze tanji yo mari kati ka shi tondo ha ko mari so tanda korka yopi kabla so la korka yopi kabla chu che gore zina su te she gore.
Yeah, so mainly what is it saying in this verse that we just read? Is it saying mainly that this opportunity that we have as in this human life, we need to kind of to take advantage of it and to make it meaningful in terms of to do spiritual practice or Dharma practice. Why? Because this life, we don't have a lot of time in this life, right? So we're born and then at first like we don't know anything and then like we start to know how to get along in this life and so forth. And then we reach the age of 20, 30, 40, and then the life just goes on without having like really good opportunity to really make them meaningful or to to take advantage on this precious human body that we have. So therefore the type of thought that we need to adapt is that we don't have a lot of time in this life and we also don't know when we are going to die. Some people are going to die at the age of 20 and some people are going to die at the age of 50. We cannot really make plans for this life. So therefore we need to do the best in order to make this life meaningful and useful.
Tanda Narutso tanda so ki tandra wo msechi ya ki tandra wo de ki temba de ki pon rawo tni chi yo de na tan ri ta tan yima rel pa nyo cha kyang kan ni kyang chi le ngo kor tango ri chi le kya pansel kya ze she go ri ngo ko tang yo ri ani chi le du po tang go ri tan ri nimbo me ya kyang mse ta nga so ki nyo song sa tan ri mse ta mse tan ri ro chi ki de yo ri samni samlo de ya samlo kor na ani tsendele nimbo me baga chuma chena jen nimbo chang chawa chi mundu sambi ga samlo de shage reze gore tsendi nashi dose di ta tanda nga zo tsowa ki tandele nimbo chi ngoni mundu ta chunda o chi cheni tangi dewa chi top na sambi samlo de legres gore.
Yeah, so then we can also reflect on how we carry this life. So we carry this life a lot by doing not so many meaningful things and also things that are harmful for others, such as being kind of clever in terms of like being cunning, not being nice to others, kind of fooling others and so forth. So this is, in a way, if we look at our lives, so this is how we spend our lives. And therefore, reflecting on this, we think, oh, like really, this life are not really meaningful, like how I spend them or how I carry my life. So having this thought that the way that I carry my life is not meaningful, we should develop this type of aspiration or thought, oh, I should do something meaningful with my life. I should really strive for ultimate happiness, not just for the temporary happiness for which I'm just striving all day and doing like this kind of bad or negative actions. I should really do something meaningful with my life and to spend my life while really practicing the authentic Dharma for the long-term happiness.
아니 렌제 말랑 코리 등나나 야야사나 치미 나시 도제디 당원이 센들라테 찍든지 치 녀탄로 너 치치르 나포치야라 소피 강안로 장장 스니 든지 진로 선다 제치말테 치 니약본로 치 용제레 삼나데 revagiave corpores carzeti se ngama napse on the ro chi chini chendel and the chi ma to ma chore ta chendel yo monitoni chason yo mola so pa pantap chi ma chini chason yo mola so pa la penando chata control ni lo wan chat pa che teni koni ke kar chena te na jin chini ro na se chima le ya ta ran res kar ge kar san and je te yo yan so se chima Kiva teji chakares, teji matse maliki kapore, tendron rawajili kesona, kanji yosaring as savloji down that tendro damita so kangita tatali, jenga so manton yetazea, tanyawazea, so shigore, so ma kesona, delicani kazayosari, tendichik sound time on the chiminashi does it, tachimashi. Dal Macedon education, Chamashi Kapochi on Yosa, Teon, Donjo, Chamalian, Riva Shatramia, and Yugoslavlo, Legres.
Okay, so the next part of the verse is by contemplating repeatedly the truth of karma and samsaric suffering. So preoccupation with next life will come to cease. So what does it mean? It means that this life, so we have a lot of different problems, right? Different kind of problems, and we also not really explain them very meaningfully. So if we think about this life, there is no really reason that we'll think that something is going to change. Why? Because in this life also we give this kind of authority to the disturbing emotions to manage our life and our actions, and there is no reason that the fruit or the result won't be ripened in next life for all the different kind of problems that we face also this life. And so therefore we don't have any kind of basis to hope for that something is going to get better. And also thinking further, like thinking on this line of reasoning, so there is also no reason to think that it will be very, very easy for us to obtain this human precious life in the next life, because it's very, very rare. And if we are not going to obtain this precious human life, so we should think, okay, so what's going to happen in next life? What kind of physical basis I'm going to obtain? No? So we can be reborn as like animals or any type of lower being such as hell being or preta, like the hungry ghost, and then we should think what kind of suffering they are going through, these types of beings. And thinking and contemplating about this verse and about the truth of karma and samsaric suffering, so we kind of negate or eliminating by this type of thought the preoccupation for the next life as well.
Last. Tantani, Tandri Samlo Chiton, the Senda Tansema Tamala, Nato Chasonyo Munguachel, Tanjana, Kangeni Kangi Matoyo Amandus, Temesonsa Tester, some Tester Combin Corri Pensola, Yemokachiza, Makizi on the Saturday Samlo Town, the Tangato and the Jim Corazi, the Atikata Nationishina, restricts the Gori, Nyavayeta, and Roteling, and some Matan Hamain, Hazini, Dendrosum, the Gori Tangato. Kiva Katse Linjana, Tarbaziata to Masona, Tinalan Korea Reshas, Tinalan Korna, Neka Kipo, Tadeki Yoreta, Yanjo, Dinganal Mazando Arepena, Chindichikanal Magic Tania, Corlon Chicon, Samsabli, Chikaliato, Yonre, the Samara, Yanchana Mans and Revutaya Meachan. Onkoi did Ziat, Tendichires, Samsabli Chananiati, Marisum, Yari, the Marisum, what in Algiers, Tandal Yemo Kachitama Kizzi, Tandal Church Commando, the Litartachi Inchi Munchichego Samnita, Kangi Monichi Rancho go at the Kachimborese or a team, Markin and Jongo Samlo Televio. I'm trying to kill a calendar.
Telling you that. Could you tell this new? Okay, so yeah, therefore we need to think like if you're going to give like the authority or the power to the disturbing emotions in this life and the next life, so there is no reason that nothing but problems will come in this life or next life. So this is what's going to happen, and therefore, as the next verse is saying, as you habituate in this way of what we talked about in the former verses, as you habituate in this way, and when not even an instant of admiration arises for the prosperities of cyclic existence, so we are not going to finish the verse, but we are just going to talk about this part. So why we should not kind of have this wish or attachment or desire for the things of, how it is called here, like the prosperities of cyclic existence, like for all the different good things of the cyclic existence, because therefore, if we are going to engage in this, so we are never going to be out of this samsara. We are never going to develop not renunciation, and we are never going to be liberated from this cyclic existence. So when we are talking about cyclic existence, so in general the presentation is talking about 6 different kind of realms. So the human realms, the God realms, or the celestial beings, the demigod realms, or the demi-celestial beings, the pretas, or we can call them the hungry ghosts, the hell beings, and animals, and the human realm. So these are the 6. And in general, yes, we can say that in samsara there is a certain type of happiness which is temporary. But in this temporary happiness, so what is going to happen is that we are going again falling into suffering over and over again. We can also compare it to a certain metaphor or example that someone, for example, sometimes when someone is in the water, so sometimes his head is above the water and sometimes is under the water. So just like this cyclic existence is going to cycle again and again and again, and we are going to suffer. So therefore, what type of thought we should develop based on this type of thinking? We should think there is really no meaning in this life, like there is really kind of no essence, no meaning, there is really no essence like in this type of cycling, in this cyclic existence over and over again. We should develop this kind of thought, and so that, okay, therefore I should be liberated from this problem and suffering of being in this cyclic existence.
Sonsa, Matso Kato Nesaptani, Sonsa Tatani, Nyandan Sankati Yena Samrotam, Kuandeli Tarson and Rikandu, Sami Nyansak and the Tarpatoni Luchona Tessing Joki Valezia, Nyandan Santi Tatala, Tan Kuandeli Tartap Chichego, Sami Saulo, Narmachi the Katina, Lady Ashpena, Zombachi the Zonkana Lutsona, Tanga Zonkan Dinani Tarsona Nyan. Gagundu Sami Katina, Saulochi Lady Anoj, Leto Sona, and the Nazo Notion is shaping Nenjon there, Tinikevares.
Yes. Okay, so how we should develop this type of thinking? Like what should this type of attitude look like? So this type of attitude should look like it's presented in the text. And when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point, renunciation has a reason. So this type of intensity of thought we should develop that day and night, like non-stop. Like we should have this thought, how wonderful it would be if I'll be liberated from all these types of suffering. How wonderful if I'll be able to achieve liberation, having this very clear and genuine mind, like thinking this type of thought day and night. And we can also have this type of example of someone who is in the prison. This is also what is presented in the Buddhism as the kind of measure of how we know that we reach this development of the renunciation. So if, like, just like someone who is in the prison is developing, he has like this feeling like how wonderful it would be if I'll be out of this prison, how wonderful it would be if I won't be a prisoner anymore. So this is the type of intensity of thought that we should have, and then we can say, yes, we develop the thought of renunciation or determination to be free from samsara.
Rejetani, Tangim Jonzia, the Tanichi or Chucheni Chilikechen Bochiri, Casset Natsun Kuali Targo, Sambigo, Samlo Narmachimena, the Chuchequai Carriorico, Peshanda Wachizodin, and they get to the Rakares and the Samlo Tanichim, Tami Monsality and Coriori. Yenayon. Jitendi Gon Pesha Mombo Sotoni, Siliki Patangiore, the Dekiche Chonchena, Masotina, the Kosochiposhi, which you check it on my Manzomba Maris, the Corosol, Maki Nicatina, Tanji sem gana san rawo tanji kange ngol tsini tani mombo la de ore ore ta tani chika.
Yes, so therefore, if you don't have any type of this thought of renunciation, so what is going to happen? We are just going to spend this life thinking of how I can achieve more money, how I can make this life more better, and just spending this life with this type of attitude. And we can see that people do spend this life with their attitude. There are a lot of very, very rich people, very wealthy people that have a lot of material things, that possess a lot of type of material things in this life. And we can also think about them and say, oh, in comparison to them, so their life must be much more happier, like they have much better conditions, they're able to achieve what they want in much easier or quicker way. So we can have this type of thought, right?
Non teni te tan son ba ngen jong dan jawon rawo ta ngen jong chima chi mai na nga tsu kyong kar karina pena aranton de ni chi na ta aranton na dupot ngal kan izo ki chi mu pento mandu sambi saulo ya po chi le ma to na ke ara che to ta ni ni omar ara te tona ya po chi ni mandu tu ngal ni ma ta pa kan ni che ndu sambi saulo na ma chi ki ona jini ara man ton ni sam ja to ta ni ji mu te ya po chi ndu sam ni tal yonde ta ta wi ji ni ngat sa wa ni sam ja to yo mare.
אני אגיד לה, כאילו, נגולה את מיצ'ו כותב סוקולה, כמון סומבים בה. תתן ג'לבה.
Otandati pena nenjong de kiwala, koala kyun yang pochi tongo, koala kyun matone, zawani ni pento ma pejana, ara la kyun matone, ke katina arantoni de de ara la kyun yang pochi tongo jini ara de cheto at the river yore sitini peja.
Yes, and also, so if we really want to develop this type of renunciation, this type of determination to be free from samsara, from the cyclic existence, so what we should do, we should see the faults in this cyclic existence. Because just like a person who is addicted to alcohol, so if he's not going to see the faults in drinking alcohol and he'll just think like, there is no any faults, it's okay, I'll just keep doing this, there is no reason that he will ever develop this aspiration to quit this type of negative habit. But only if someone will really reflect and think, oh, really, if I drink alcohol, it won't be okay, it has this and these faults and problems, so then, so only then he will develop this type of thought of, I want to quit alcohol. This is the same with the thought of renunciation from cyclic existence. If you want to see the faults in the cyclic existence, so there's no reason that you will develop this type of thought that I want to be free from this situation.
Anita, koa le kyun shi wuchi tanga, sun koa li tarwi ngen jong jabze ore, ni koa li kyun ta korezina, koa li kyun ta koa ta korezina, ta nao chuni shena, koa ga tsawa ngoni ta danzan ziyate le jayang gore, soso ta tsawa chimbo shi wuchi che, soso tsawa chimbo le che wale tani ma ndo chak tang kontro ni le yung gore, anyu nyu chi ta yangsare.
Okay, so when we say to see the faults in samsara, to see the faults in cyclic existence. So what do we mean by saying that? So according to the Buddhist presentation, the meaning is to see the faults in the root of the samsara. What is the root of the samsara? This is the self-grasping ignorance, the self-grasping mind, and also the self-cherishing mind. From this type of attitudes, all the disturbing emotions come into, like the anger, attachment, and so forth.
Teni do chata control so pala teni tutsulu teni ono semze andra ota yoje andra ota chato andra ota so semaki pag nyomombi semta so teni shi don lo magiana je teni chil mari tele gore ze gore.
Yes, and then from these afflictions of anger and attachment, so it's going to spread out just like leaves in the tree. All the other disturbing emotions and kind of frustrated minds, such as being jealous, thinking in a cunning way, like in very, very, like how to fool people, or like this sort of harming people. So this will just going to increase.
Teni nanga samlun chuwala teni chalo ko linga ni ka joba marap tele ngori ligi ko ni socho pala so pa kamaja la so pa tandra mandata na ko ni kyang shi ala so pango ko ta la so pi teni linga ni ka ta ye mbare yen chuwala teni luta nga ni ka joba marap tele Tani linga yesu kyoba mara kwa andar cheni tsendal pa soso dukpo tang jala dukpo tang te mazen tse chima le yang dukpo yang ke kanda me mongbo chik sani njogo yore ze gore.
Yes, so based on this type of attitudes that we have, this type of attitudes, these disturbing attitudes that we enumerated, so what is going to happen? Then the actions that we are going to perform through the mind, speech and body are going to be negative and bad as well. So from the body, from the perspective of the physical actions, we are going to engage in actions which are driven by these disturbing emotions, such as killing, stealing, and so forth. And from the medium of the speech, so we are going to say lies or to engage in these actions because we are driven by this kind of disturbed or negative states of mind. So also what is going to happen is that we are going to harm both ourselves and others by performing these actions, being under this influence of the states of mind. Being under this influence of the states of mind and performing these actions, so we are going to accumulate a lot of negative karma, I think we can say, for the next life that is going to ripen in a negative way in result.
So kangezo ki tsama so seml tiyo pa semgna ni nyomon bi seml tiyo pa ta so hakko to so le kyen yak po chin ton tele teni ke kana chala so kanga mambo chi yo pan ton top sone teni tenji kange ga na kyang ga matsiki tan ze ko na jamba ta le yak po sa wa ni mandu ta te samjo cha ga ta shi che ko ndu so ga ki nyomon ba so me pa zo go ndu sambi teni ngen chong ga sa lo tenji ni le ngore.
Yes, so then thinking about all these type of problems and these negative types of mind and these attitudes, thinking that, seeing the faults in them and also seeing the faults of what kind of negative results they are going to bring in this life and next life. So we can think that there is no any point on spending this life being under the influence of these emotions. And then we can actually develop this type of mind of wanting to be liberated from the situation that we are at.
Also, teni nga tso ngen jogo ngotron rawo teni chini jayi ta nga tso ma che sa chole so sa chole yo na te no rochi.
Yeah, so this is the presentation of the presentation of Renunciation, sorry. So, but the main thing in this class is to do the Q&A session. So, therefore, we are going to do Q&A session. So, if you have any questions, so please bring.
Sorry.
No. So in the beginning, when you were talking about the first principle, there was something that you mentioned on the lines of emptiness. So if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that, I would like to know more about how to deal with emptiness, because most people that I meet, and even me at some point of time, I've dealt with something that we call as void. So how do we deal with that?
Something that we call as what, sorry?
Void.
Void.
V-O-I-D.
Okay. Dr. Shana, te kieran tampo te cosam sonam sub. Lansan songi kola kieran kamol son vai pa. Ani te nangna te toni tok shera shigirba. Te kola dis te Geshe Rangrig sa.
Laso. Tate ngoni nachu nani ke cheshu te tsege yore. Tanga so taki na shen kwan ko ke tsawa so ngoni te danza je la de gore. Nga danza me pa zo ala tomba ni zeat topi shirav te mena danza jevi tabi o mare ze gore.
Yeah, so in Buddhism it is being considered as one of the most important thing, the wisdom which realizes emptiness. So why it is being considered such important? So we talked about the root of samsara, right? The cyclic existence. The root of the cyclic existence is the self-grasping ignorance. The self-grasping ignorance can only be eliminated by the wisdom realizing emptiness.
Laso tani tomba ni zeni tanya te gyar de ya nga so da ya na re chala ina ta so son rawo chi pe gyar na so son rawo ta nja na jin chi ma ta pa tsi so na ni me ya tani ri chin de shi gya yo re jazin ha ko
Cha.
jazin rimbo zero
Jana.
tsel so na.
So this term which is called emptiness, so what is it actually referring to? So just like rainbow, if you're going to search for ourselves, for like the me, for the I, or for any other thing, we won't be able to find anything after searching and analyzing.
Sonza nga so data ziat patsi sona me pat ngombo le jup ko kewa sama chmai mem lo man kam na shimai kam na intelligent bi keo kanzi ni sa shirab tsu chi yore tinal kam chuk go ni tse chi son yore atin.
Yes, so therefore if you're going to search, we're not going to find. Like we are not going to find suffering. This is the meaning while saying this term emptiness. And there is also one verse of the great master Nagarjuna, which it says that yes, that through this verse, I cannot say this verse exactly, like to translate it directly, but it is kind of the way of looking for the self through the 6 different elements, such as the earth, water, fire element, the wind element, the element of the space, and the element of the consciousness. So if you are going to look through through each one of these elements, we are not what is the self, like if you are going to search in these elements, so we cannot find the self.
Teni the tsetandro the karsho the ngaso nabje ngazini so seti hachani tsawa chimbo tanza mulili so tsawa chimbo chi yomar tenga so tsama hakore ni ti tsawa chimbo ngata kanji reze on de so zubongo le chashin le tseyongore saze o de so we shata ribala so pale shaze ore te so ngareves teni meze on de so zupo le troyore trot so trokan kam de so men kam jakore te so ngareves ani sa cheze ti chala so pe lonshi nga so pombo de trip de wo so de so ngareves sa cheme lonze ti wugle ti tin so ko so sa ti so ngareves tani namshi ze ti nga so samlo ta yora samlo le teni ti so ngareves tema nga so ko pa na lo ton chan ro de tin yang mombo yori ti so ngareves ti pa chi se on di nga pa njan jinja ti ana jing ro ma to de ngareze ya ndu tsi sa chi nya mandu ze wo.
Yes, so what is the manner of looking for the self? Like what is the method that we are going to apply here? So, in usual, this self we consider it to be the most precious thing in the world, right? This is like the most important and the precious thing that we keep cherishing all the time, right? But what is the mode of abiding of this self? Like what is this self? If you are trying to search for it. So if you are going through the 6 elements, so there is first the earth element. The earth element is referring to the muscles and the bones that we have in our body. So if you are going to look to search like through this element, whether there is the self in this muscles or bone in the flesh, we are not going to find the self, right? The same is for the water, the water element, which is referring to the blood and the different kind of liquids that we have in the body. Also and then the fire, it is referring to the heat, the element of heat in our body. Then the element of the wind it is referring to the breathing, to the air that is going through our body. Then the element of space, it is referring to the kind of empty spaces that we have in our body. Then the element of the main consciousness, it is referring to the mind, right? To the consciousness that we have. So the manner of searching for the self is looking upon the 6 different elements and seeing that after searching in each one of them, there is nothing which we can find and say that this is me or this is me in each different kind of element.
La satni anjo ngomo le ko sonjamba te ta chikpan ro tse ton chi seti ta pombo ta ngani ka chi jani pombo zeat ta ngani te so jaya rendu pombo koronga rendu ze chawa chik ta ro ta pombo ta ngari zina nga chu pombo zeat ngo ta la pa ta kamba la so pare te na nga chu ngi ngo ta ngi la pa ta ngi kamba ta ngi lo ta ngi samlo zini so choma te ni chala ta wan ro chi samlo tang ndu nga samlo tang ndu te nga re ndu so ta pombo koro jan nga janen samlo korong go ni nga chona ge samlo ta te na pombo ta nga ngo je ndu ani ta pombo ta nga ni tate yin na ani mo cha ta ni me na je ngo tate ri tu Yana, and so it's a real marbonage, Rezia, the Marbozia, the more chick radio, the Nichik Bar in the way, Yantan did that on Shiria, Tatan shot the kid to the match.
Okay, so and then there is other verse that Ariana Garjuna is presenting about the manner of searching for the self. So what is he presenting? He's asking, so whether the self is something which is different in its essence from the aggregates or something which is the same as the aggregates. So if you're going with the second option, something which is the same with the aggregates, so we have to ask like what it is. So is it like my mind, my leg, my foot, my chest, and my arms, and so forth? So what is going to happen? It is going to contradict the usual way of thinking that we have in general, right? Because in general, we don't say, I am my mind, or I am my arm. I say my arm or my mind. We have like this kind of sense that there is the self, which is the possessor of the things, like kind of the furniture, like it has like these things, right? But we never say like, I am the leg, and so forth, right? So therefore, this is kind of the reasoning which negates this second option, that the self is that the self is the same as the body, not the same essence. So that the self is the same as the body. This is negating this type of option. And then the second type of option, the first type of option, that the self it is something which is kind of different by entity or by identity from the aggregates that we have. By saying aggregates, we mean like the mental, like the mind. Mainly we refer to the mind and to the body, to the physical body. This is what we mean by saying aggregates. So if you are positing the self as different by entity from the aggregate, so we are going to ask whether the self is just like car and its driver, which is kind of just can get out of the car and then just to be something which is different from it.
Asotanita re mochatanita carnage na su pombo do ajana na su pukiranji ka andro san andro to etene jure ta zawani ndro to marana su pombo ta nyamda ne de na mato los joni che ta shima son pa te los che to ma shi son di an le wangi pombo jamba chi zoni antel garni to jari katsawani ni che mato son sa pombo lingo tata pa chime ata sabo sa kyant ge ngore.
Yes, so it is going to be very clear for us that it is not very possible to posit this kind of assertion that the self is different by entity or by essence from the aggregates, like the physical body or the mind that we have. Why? Because if you are going to assert this type of assertion, so what's going to happen is that we are going to think that we are going to assert that there is a self which is just like using the car, which in this case it's the aggregates. And then he can just go out of the car and go travel wherever he wants, like without being dependent on the aggregates, right? But this is not the case, because since we are born until we are die, we are going to stay with these aggregates without any separation, right? With the physical body or with the mind. And therefore we cannot assert this type of assertion. Of course, that's when we are going to die, so by the force of the karmic tendencies, so we are going to take other body and different type of aggregates. But yeah, when we are talking about whether the self can be identified as different by means of entity from the aggregates, so we cannot posit it through this kind of reason.
Asatani ta pombo tango chi parezena pombo tango chi li losses chi o marze ta losse mena ta kinajere goni kamba bart sem savloni chlo part ka ti sona dili losse ngo tat ngo chi bi ngaji on sina ne ye yo mari ta ki ke sa me chma ize at si tan chi wa te naje ti son di pombo de ngo chi bi ngaji ne ye yo mari ngo chi bi ngaji a chin zu sa ra yo mari.
Yes, and then we are going to ask again, like whether we can find a self which is like a kind of the same by entity to the aggregates, and which we can find it like after searching. So also, just we presented with the type of analyzation with the different kind of elements in the body and the mind, right? Like that, looking for the element of the earth, the fire, the water, the wind, and so forth. So there is nothing that eventually we can point on and say this is the self by looking in these different types of aggregates.
So that the region Pa tsisona na tsawani ni nyego mandus, tsisona tsawani ni manyo chani tomba zegor. Namje gazo de la so pa tsama nyon de gore. Te sonza yon yo de ni tsisona na mera sonza temje non di yo tombi ngal le mere zeni tene temje da tomba ni zipitarnya de ni chonwari tanda tomba ni se.
Yes, so therefore, since after searching there is nothing that we can find, this is what is called empty or emptiness. After searching, there is nothing that we can find, and then saying like this is the self or point on why. But in general, there is the self which is experiencing happiness and suffering, right? So therefore, by means of interdependence, there is the self. But by means of but after looking, after searching for it, so it is empty. This is not. There is nothing that you can find.
So na chu dem rawat ti lona te temje ta tomba ni ze ke cha ti shu chi le re pa ko at rawat jam na tinil temje tomba ni kan ko at ja gore te so lona mon bor le go ti temje tomba ni ze ta inji ni ta ni yo jero.
Yes, so therefore in the different books of Buddhism, so these terms of emptiness and interdependence are going to come very, very often. So this is the kind of the meaning that we can apply for them, this kind of explanation that was given.
Nani namje soso njovi kable na ndikere de ni gomja ni du na ndikere ngaze ni soso sawa chiwi ngata taki na ndikere mo tata restire kar yinchi munchi si dena nyam nyongol soso tswa le ayore ze ore tomba ni toze di parishi ngoni toni soso tenjatso na jin toya ga tedi tswa le ayore ze ore tenji le sona teni tomba ni toze ya te jare Janja tanti njala na jana ji ton di zina numerani tenji ji tswa ji soso la tenji ta tan ji le ayore ze ore ni tomba ni ko le ngore
tomari ko la mo sanda
tanda na je tsedina.
Yeah, so therefore if someone is going to really kind of to search over and over again, like this type of self, so eventually it's going to have this type of feeling that of the emptiness, in the sense that the things are kind of like rainbow. This is the example that was given.
Tenite saulo ngaron le saulo tana ya namji ta deshon rawo ta to cheshon rawo ta teresha control rawo no samba ma ki tenji chetia so control on ke ta kan san ma zi tenji chini lo de na ma samlo te jen ro ndu ya chi na san rawo na ni na san ro ta shik chembo shu na ka ko ri mu te ngo na rawo te na ni na ngo ta kan du san ngo koro pa zi ni tenji saulo ta ni sambo saulo ta tenji chini par shi na san rawo ta pa te chon ro rawo ta kati nyoing go ni chop to tindi saulo tani yamni che atresha tindi saulo tanja ti nga za zawa chimbo de chongjo changro nga zawa chimbo ma chen nga la tim chadang la so pa ke gu mar tindi ma nyo mo to nga ke che tere.
So this is the most beneficial for me in my life, like the most effective for me in my life, because for example, if I'm getting angry or if like anger arises in me, so then I can try to analyze and to search, to look whether I can pinpoint on this self which is being angry, like to say like, this is the self which is being angry. And after not finding it is very, very helping me in this type of cases. Also, for example, when I have headache or something like this, so I can also look in my head and starting to search and look whether I can find like this type of pain that I have, and just try to search for it. And also this is something which is very, very helping for me and also releases my pain. And therefore, through this type of thinking, this grasping at the self is going to decrease slowly. And after decreasing, also the self-cherishing mind is going to decrease, right? Based on the disturbing emotions that come based on the self-cherishing mind, such as anger, attachment, and so forth, are also going to decrease in turn. So therefore, this is the method which is beneficial. Okay.
Thank you so much for such a thought-provoking explanation. And just one doubt that crossed my mind while you were explaining is, when you were talking about the 5 elements, So in Buddhism, I've read somewhere in the scriptures about the 5 types of koshas or elements or sheath that they might call. So does this refer to that, like the Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha? Does this refer to those 5 elements that you mentioned in any way, or is it linked in any way?
Kiran kosha sarvatanita kiran kingiva.
Koshaya.
This is kind of a Hindi term, right? I mean,
It's a Sanskrit term.
Sanskrit,
Yes.
like that.
Shigmar.
If you can find like what it means in English or something like this, maybe we can.
In English, it means sheath. I mean the layers of the body, like 5 layers, and it translates to the air body, the body that contains the air, the body that contains fire, the body that contains water. So I'm not sure. When you were talking about it, it just crossed my mind, so I just wanted to ask this one.
The kungi kare sungi resa. The kong kosha sarvatane te kong motro ragva resa. Ani te kosha sarvate te kongi sambala te jungana. Te kong jungana kola te sonsong. Te jungana tan jelba te chiki chigla jarere. Perna te kosha na te jungana rerera. Chiki chigla jarere tende da sonsong.
I think Yapungo Masas Shisamari.
I don't know very good I can.
Okay. I think it was in a different language. So.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for the elaborate explanation. It is very thought-provoking and it answered a lot of questions.
So, Karnishin to chair, the Karangi, the Geshe. What the Nala looking for.
Then I'm Kejam Bantam Mashiri Matonga, Hindi to Sukatina, something as Jimji to Penu, that take Shigmari, Tapshimandu.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the language of Hindi, so there is no any kind of way. But even though I want to kind of search this language.
That's
Yes, so renunciation is something I think about a lot. And try to hand over certain things in my life, renunciating. And sometimes I think that I should renunciate more of my life because I'm wasting time, and I should spend more time like studying Dharma and meditating and things like this. And also, this is one part, and also sometimes I read in books written by Tibetan monks, they talk about like how the lay people, the people who are not monks, are also, following Buddhism and getting great rewards. That they're not renunciating their whole life, they're getting married, they're having children, they're working a job, but they're still getting a lot of benefit from and living by the Dharma. And I suppose like, I don't know, I think like my question is like how do you know how much to renunciate in your life or something, or how do you know what is for you and what is a distraction from finding truth?
For you, what is the distraction from finding? What is for you and what is the distraction from finding truth? Okay. Okay. Let's do this. The gift for it. Ta namyuna nga the nyejungi korla mampo samlatande yosa. Ani yan te na yan samsala tende samgyo chichana peranga nye gyundangi chavatezo. The chichana te pangosa. Kashe nye tatong pangmatu. Matna yan te pangosa mamporesa. Ania te kon samsam te pope tsampe te tso log de oresa. Ai te tso na la karasung oresa na. Te pena konso popa marete trapatetso. En trapatetso karasung oresa na te mikia ina. Ani yan te nachugi Jesu jangi ore. Ina te gyacha gya kana te sipe punso te pangi ambare. Ani sana te chansa gyore, te pogo ke gyore, tende pasokpa, chena de gyorenia, te kepsan ratan ragyore. Ani kongitio te dodo shena te perna Pangosa. Can you please say
Which part?
the last part? I think that this was the main question, right?
Yeah, I guess the question is like how to know what to renunciate, or what is like important for your life, or what is distracting you from finding truth. You know.
Okay. Pangosa te nga kandes mozin chetugire. Te perna te nga te nanchul jugegi parchete kare sa tanada.
La sota nga tso nanchu trapa zedea tata namba musi nga tso leka kari na rikchi kanzi zea chindo wa chu nyale che rikchi kanzi na wo chiga kongla tsendro go yore ma to yinchi munchi trapa ga che na jinchi ta che re mar ta te goya go mari su ta nga tso ha goya ta so do pa ta control aso pal wancha ta macheni so Pashirable teni, eka kariche gona teche to tagora. Nga son kwa la nation chela soso zaya tan tonya tan rotan chiri sama ge che ta lechi ta gyab ko gore te ma gyam na yo pena zomba chi zon kanal deoti koroni ma shil kala sa go gore. Chap san ro go gore leka che go gore sama zo gore te nekap ki goya ta sama kodru che gore te pangwa yo ma. Ina te so sama tarba thoba ge che tene nekap ko goya chire ma to ta ngam tharti ko mu yen rawo de ke che ta nekap ko de ke chi ora ta shiu chi zawa chen bo chen tndi ma chen tni ta tan rawo chen rig de ore la par de na chu na ni she de wa ta so chen to sa ni she gore te chima che jin da sa sakang ge che to ma aro ta pare ta pa ga na chu na ni che goya sa ma nge che to yo ma re la na chu nyam le chen ge sa ma de che to go zina kali ka po shuri ina so kan tup chi ro yu ki she ya ta chen to bo shu she yo ra ya yaxsho de she yo gore
Chetogi mare kare nga junche.
Mari ngen jongze na ta so de che ze chama chujin che to yo mari na ka se to chi na kali jamba chi ni yagi chin ro ayori ma cha song
Okay, so in general, so yeah, like monks, we can call them kind of professionals in terms of like the taking Buddhism, like and being like really professionals upon it, like professional, like this type of term in Tibetan. It's also referring for someone, for example, who is really professional in a certain kind of occupation or studies and so forth. So this is what monks are doing in general. But also, like what we need to think mainly is that whether we are layperson or whether we are monks, so what we need to think mainly is how to kind of eliminate the disturbing emotions and not to give the control or the power to the disturbing emotions to control us by a manner of intelligence, like kind of the discriminating awareness, which kind of by these two, so not giving the disturbing emotion this kind of authority to control our life. So this is what we need to think about. And also, like, of course, since we live in this world, so we need to strive for different things, right? Like we need to look after things that can sustain us in this life, like food, money, and so forth. Of course, like we need this thing. Anyone need this kind of thing. But what we need to think is also that this type of thing, I'm doing it for the I'm kind of dedicating all these activities, all these worldly activities. It didn't say worldly activities, sorry, but this kind of all the activities of looking for food, for place to stay, and so forth. So I'm kind of dedicating it for higher goal, like ultimate happiness. This is what I'm doing it for, and not kind of being like thinking about these things just in terms of like a narrow type of mind thing, and just like the very temporary happiness that it can bring me, like all this type of thing. And so yes, and also the kerangi sumpatama
that ko na chu nyamlen se de at so kan tap tu chi nam ge jong na shia chama chujin da chi to ko na ka pore de so chen tom bo shu shi yores.
And also as for like practicing Buddhism, so what we should do is that we should practice as much as we can, but we cannot, even for example, I'm a monk, right? I cannot practice it just like as it is being written in this Buddhist scriptures. Like I cannot practice one-to-one, like doing like 100% as it's being written. What is being presented in the Buddhist scripture, this is something which is very, very high level, very, very high level of practice. This is something that none of us can really do exactly as it is said, right? But what we should do is that we should make the best that we can in order to practice these things.
Pejanata kitani Nyachu Yavlin Chinkichina Kimbayina, Atopol Kirachimbo Chikarichon Resiti, and the Lotamar Paloza Chora, Lotama Bala Chansaki or Bugayori, Nishinkanda Mutri Kanyache, Nishirete, Yavlin Topal, Tapokatrapatas over Kolaki Mariku, Topachimbo Shujere, Nabjang Gedang Swakina Tara Cargona, Chen and Recordet, so Nangasam the Chada Moson Matan in Yavlin Chetuna, Trapai he tried within the Chonyore.
Yes, so also like there are a lot of this is not exactly what Kenla said, but because I don't remember exactly the words, but in general, like there is no any necessity like that. If you are a lay person, so it means that you cannot have very, very high or good practice. Because, for example, in the Tibetan society, there is the example of Marpa, the Lotsawa Marpa, which is being considered as one of the great practitioners and really, really realized master. So Lotsawa Marpa was living with his wife, like he got married, he also went to work in the field. This is the way that he carried his life and his work. But really, if we compare him like to other type of monks, so really like he's really superior like to them in terms of realizations, because what he did, like in the essence of what we should do is that, like he did, like Lotsawa Marpa did, is that we should not give like not being under the sway of the disturbing emotions. So just like he did his life just like a lay person, but he really was not under the sway of the disturbing emotions such as attachment, anger, ignorance, and so forth, and therefore he practiced very, very well and considered to be one of the best practitioners.
So, then is
it okay for?
Yes.
It's not directly. So I recently read this book that was called The Buddhist on Death Row. I don't know if you heard about it. The Buddhist on Death Row. About a guy that is in jail in America, and he became a really good Buddhist practitioner. And he's practicing for many years with different Buddhist teachers. And then there was this point where he might have been pardoned and get free. And then he describes in the book how the most scary thing for him is to imagine that he's free from the jail, because he's in jail for over 30 years already, and he doesn't know what's happening out there and what's coming next, and that this is a really scary thing, and that he had this idea that it's easier to stay in prison than going out to this life. And I think this is a bit like he made this parallel with the jail earlier when he was teaching, and I think that's like one of the issues. Like when we think about renunciation, we cannot really imagine what is coming after. Like if we give up the things, will I still be safe? If I give up my job, for example, how do I survive? Like Buddhism tells you, oh yeah, you can get enlightened, you have this goal, but between here where I am and here, there's like a lot of steps. And I think it's kind of scary to do the step with renunciation, because it's so unclear what is coming, because I'm realistic, I'm not close to enlightenment. So if I renunciate these things now, how do I know that I'm not just like crashing or whatever?
That's all. The Drumshik, the croissants. Drumshik never. The Michigi, the Arila, the Tsongana Sugar. And it's Tsongana de Picasso compared to Nanchugi Corlet and Moto Ragna. Con Yalempe Zetobo, La Levisser. אני לא סום ג'לה, אני שינה con Tsonkane, te Toldoire. אני תקע סוכם פה שנה כברגע, אני סנת מאום פה, קרצ'ון יאינה מילה con תוקפסן, con שנה פה שוצ'ן פה כברגע. אני תקע נאשין, te perna nazo leka pang, nazo leka te pang, leka chaya te pang, nazo namgyungi mitsekieltan te pang na. Ani te jela kareyongi re nga hako gemeten nga la selpo midu ani te selpo metsan te pe shenan chentore. Te gani sena te mo netan gishila shana kecha shena te nga sangesa ta pe tarimpo.
Re.
Chetsan te nga pang na nga perna kanislo ne leka pang ne mitsekieltan te pang ani jeman nga la dewa yongwa te nga kanjes hako arche dugires. Very, very tough question.
교로세한테 뭐니래 소소 그 촌라고 지금 마트는 게마 네 때정도 지시에 있어서 미지 그 지자멜라 그 남터로 있어요. 만지자멜라다 곰잔니 기어담바 시우치레데 당연히 지체고서는 거를 내가 참아 빠니 정골 저레들 아니 다오카시 데티 지자멜라 나지 제마토니니 말레오레스 니 지자파 멜라 방고팅아야 방고서 손라리스 방고지네 하고다 방고지는 하고다 로모 하죠 데트리 제니 소소 따따한 지 촌지 마토나 요 바쇼코 제토야 되어마치 나빈 소소 소아키 탄데야 자 잠바 나추 냐리 제탄데야 마톰네 티파루카니 나리 제아틴리 요사리 tombote chila 하고서 말이 나주가 냠래 제던데 제마토 야 소소가 나비엔 그 소아키 단데 메바샤티 바룰로니 강이나 로아요 세리머니 콜라나.
Okay, so for example, there is a story of someone who read the biography of Jetsun Milarepa, and then he was very, very inspired, and he said, wow, like he really kind of had this strong determination to be free from suffering. I'm also going to do like him. So then he went to the mountains to retreat, and after a few months, he was not able to practice well anymore. And therefore, I think that yes, there is this kind of danger that what's going to happen is that from the one hand, we are not being able to practice Buddhism properly, and on the other hand, we also gave up all our former life and the job and all these things. So yes, there is kind of a danger that we are going to kind of stuck in between.
아서송사 나론 지나요. 지금 시우지 소소가 탑tam들로 제아리아 단디 쇼팅이 제도가 삼네 제제부터 삼네티 마체니 든지 뭔가 다시 등아 트라바인스니 참마 제무죠 참마 티지아나 제든지 제메 안데 트라바인네 제요만데 트라바인 제요마 제메 몽보지오라 티 참마니 제무토 하고 소소소 건 제토도 지제니 다 쭉쭉지단 좋아 근데 거러지나 저로 레카테야 조치 이치 레카체 디졸 나주고 냐올레 갸티니 카테 칼리 름바 카테 파르고 노든지 롤로 치체나 야포치 용사로 상 름반 로치 당한 리신 트라파이나 트라파이치 고야 카멘데 메치오르다 자마미 체토요 마리 데 리치로 체마토나 단 레타나 나롤니 파메레 사망 베디 단데 나지치니 참마장자 하시네 골로틀리 체치스 시그리 카니나 론 시그리
Okay, so in general, so the main advice is just to take things like relaxedly and do them like step by step, like based on our ability and our capacity. Because, for example, I'm a Saman, so there are a lot of things that are not allowed to do, but yes, but I cannot do them like perfectly, like all the commitments that monk has. But the most important thing is that to do what everyone can, like, but gradually, like step by step, relaxedly, and do these things as much as I can. But if I see that, for example, there is the direction that I'm thinking to go towards, but like I cannot do this and this is too much. So we just need to do the things based on our capacity and gradually.
So sa choro nabjin so aki tant taran je jachene ti gan le so so que semget tel koyan kase tant den par shitan de lota sananga nam ta yo samar san te lota jana kase tenji mare ni jena yo ne jana ya kirisa.
Yes, so therefore we can go with the way that we carry our life in general, for example, whether it's work or whatever we are doing in our life, and slowly to practice like what we studied and make our mind more relaxed and calm. And then maybe there will be a stage in which we'll be able to say, okay, now there is no problem if I give up what I'm doing in my life, whatever it is, like the way I'm carrying my life, whether it's the work or anything else. Maybe we'll have like this kind of confidence. But if not, if we still have like this very, very kind of fear and anxiety, what's going to happen after announcing it? So we don't have to give up on it.
Imagine tratoni de moshipachu ko ani che yana ni risha jaga ani che yela sandri resin ani che na ya presina choro tiko lochig le tasholai lochig le tani ani che ni jikundu me ani che te usan ani che na pe por lochig le choro pa ta che tan shosen lochig jil chance jatsar
lochig rina con ani
che yo mar tiko ta che tani lochig jil ani che to samne chongal ka chetri lochil taki ya pochi tani che ani to chena kar che ko taki ya pochi tante che to na lochil jili chora ani chena ya po re la ni lente ja na ko jima ani chem do lochil jil chance ja sar.
Yeah, so also I had like one student like online, and she said like that maybe I want to become a nun. And then I said, okay, that's very good, but first like do a certain research or like look, like examine what does it mean to be nun, what are the commitments, how the life are looking when you're a nun, and so forth. Then after 1 year she got married. So
Then
she, of course, she didn't become a nun. Yeah, so therefore, like in the future, whatever one is doing in his life, it's one's own choice.
Okay. So I'm hearing what you're saying about like disturbing emotions and making sure disturbing emotions aren't taking over. And there's like there's one thing in life that causes me many disturbing emotions, and it's a normal human activity. And and I don't know whether it's a good thing if it's something I need to work with, to be like, okay, there's disturbing emotions, but they do not control me. You understand? So I don't want the disturbing emotions to control me, so I let them arise, and then I just stay focus-centered. Or is it better just to renounce that activity? So I have no disturbing emotions, so they do not control me.
So you mean the activity that is giving rise to these disturbing emotions?
Yeah.
So so the first option, like you're doing this activity, but you're trying to control yourself?
Yes, is it better to try, learn emotional discipline that you do not go, or if it is something that's very disturbing, is it better to renunciate it? I don't know.
Also, ani te kona toko shigore. Perna te chavachi, chava ina dra mena te yulchi ina dra kanta ani telecom nyomo chungioresa. Ani con te karechego yome con te toko sana deore. Ve sana te perna damka chikte, te perna chava te mutune chenayan, tatun te nyomo giwangi mason warchene, te tubar chetapchea, te tampa chik. Ani yang na tende chena yagi medo te perna chava te tsawani na pangne, ani te nyomo te tso tagarante chungi mare. Te nigina ne kare. karayagire.
Che thona ta tanda chana jire shalo ko chawali te samrewa chimota chalo ko chawa pon de ta karzina nga sunanga nyomo kama to ni tiche tere ema rikala ka trawa chi songa somu pa ta tarina pengre weze hach bazi ti ta chawa ta tari ritani chawa ta mache ni jana ya kare weze tenga so chi nang samlo ngo ni gewa ta ma to no tini ko chena ya kyapan rawo na samlo gewa ta to na chawa le shra kyabari yo mare lo tramar pelo sa te chi jin ka kya nyamo ni ko gewa ta ba chawa re kyabari yo mare ta te kariyana da yare zini nge laf tang de chogum ka ta nang nyomung go chunze che ma to na chalo ko chawa le gyan ra rin ro na ya nyomo ma te chi chong rin ro ta ri yor.
Yeah, so I cannot say like a definite answer to say like what is the best option between these two. But what we should pay attention to is that, for example, if there is certain activity, so sometimes in order not to give the disturbing emotion to give rise that there will be a reason in our mind, so we need to take a step back from this certain activity or from this certain object that is going to invoke, right? Like this disturbing emotions in our mind. But also on the other hand, if you are able to kind of control our mind, to control ourselves in this very moment, so whatever we do, like there is no problem. For example, like we gave the example of Lotsawa Marpa, the great Tibetan master that was a layperson, and also he just lived his life, like did kind of layperson activities, but he really controlled his mind, and therefore he was really realized master. So therefore, ultimately, it depends on one's mind, right? But one should see like whether one's actions, so whether he can control his mind, like during this stage, or that he's not able, and therefore maybe sometimes it's better to take a distance from this certain activity or the object that is giving rise to it.
Thank you.
So, is that in that?
One last.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tamares.
So imagine like you want to go in search of purpose or have like philosophical or intellectual conversations, but unfortunately you're not surrounded by such people on an everyday basis. So you try and you come to places like this and try to have such conversations. But in a daily basis, do you think it is possible to balance between being such people? I'm not saying that they are dumb or something like that. But when people are existing on a superficial level, but you want some depth to life where you want people to be at least on a parallel path, driven with purpose or meaning, some kind of meaning, and unfortunately you don't have such people around you. So is it better to distance yourself from that proximity or try to balance life just like that?
To distance yourself from this?
From that specific surrounding or environment, or just stay there and try to balance things.
To balance things? What do you mean by saying?
Balancing things in the sense like you need to work on your own self, but also understand and accept that these people are like this only, so I can't have any control over them. So should I just stay there and be with such company who have like no influence or poor influence over me, or just try to distance myself on a permanent basis?
That's all. Ani con tendere chokchine con de kanaslavore de samlo tin sapo tanengi mitaniatu de jidore. Ina de chokchine kongi namyune de yeongi mite so de korla pernanancho ina da yamene de tarbe korla ina da de kanta de korla sta masampache e de persa kongi yeongi mite so con la tedis shuken yamba dopo che resa ani chesa con carace gore de perna dam kachik de carresa na perna con mitezza tan delva tsamatsan kenche ani de perna rokushen batet tsakarjona ani yamene damka scendate te kongi yongi mi tezo ten tagaranin pala ngolencene ani te kongi chone te dis Peja te dopa, te kongi kansavare, te dopa te dis chungro.
Java Tanta. Tida Malatanji Soso Jenson Kori Lanjava Chesina, Kalikapo Shuri. Tida Namjinaji Karina. Soso Tanji Nalo, Nisalo, Ninjavatani, Jamses at Kinson Nal Pero, Ropat Solo Jamse Yapogum, and Nisalo Yapotanjina. Ti Gachi or Marimatonga to Jenson, so I can get you Namjing Soso. Robata Malinja Chese at the data, Calica Pondrature, Machina Yachre Sankt. And then so Samlo the Apondrichil Londrichin in the Richina Mandru, the Passacarino Mombo Kigre, the Samlo Renana, Milano, no Kigre, Samlo Tana under the counter. So Samlo Samanya Cati Totos, Manima really agitates states down to Tanayari. Jet Machina Yakiro.
Yes, I think that it's better not to kind of cut relationships like with people because it's very, very hard. This type of issue that you're presenting, and I think that the best is like to work with our mind and slowly to transform our mind into more loving towards others and more more positive towards the direction of Dharma. So I think that this is the best.
That national the pay upon Jassila in the energy or pay upon that could not just with Samal and Jachin in Georgia. That is Pitachi Chematona than that Jitamela Lojon Chini and other chanson satis, Calicapo, Ritati, the Nidiri. Jitamela Lipanaja con Yamli Chekandrois and Yamli Chemato Dachi Maleora. Or some Bikidoni, you repay upon Jassila in the Tezora, so Nagian Kori the Sogus or Chuchia, Gachi Reservoir.
In general, like there is, for example, in the text of the 37 practices of Bodhisattva, right? By yeah, so I don't remember the name of the author, sorry. So yeah, but in this text, yes, it presents that the practice of Bodhisattva is kind of to give up on bad companions. So there is this kind of practice which is presented. This is on the one hand, but on the other hand, if one cannot do it, it comes a bit like the one who wanted to practice like Milarepa. But the example that we gave, right? And he went to the mountains, and after 2-3 months, so it becomes like this a bit.
Okay.
But Milarepa was the one that was always running away from the people coming to his cave because he didn't want to get distracted by them and their influences.
Ina Milarepa ancora calma resena te con meditatam jalo macha gicheto con te tapu
Genium. She didn't draw to another takeri pay upon Jassila Zero. The Joshua the it is a Calicapo Yorisi.
Yeah, so yes, if you can go, of course it's the best, but it is difficult.
Penetrap and Regina, there's the Euro. So the chip ones. That Tapa may Kimban Regina no meet at some man Chitango with an interaction in Josin at this Calicapo Mayo.
So, for example, if someone is a monk like me, so of course it's a bit more comfortable, right? Because I don't have to associate with so many people, his family, and so forth. But if, for example, one is layperson, he's having family, kids, and so forth. So just like one day, just cutting off relationship with people, it becomes very, very difficult and problematic.
So, if I want to have like more. No, I'm sorry. I got confused.
Same come the Yaponia to it. Geshe same come to the cat is also similar Savlotan in Rodina Barishi, so the Samlo Jund so much intro and what and it takes a Geshe down to Ando. Tengo Matron, Geshe down to Amado.
So the most important thing is kind of to maintain, not to really maintain, but kind of to keep.
Balance.
To keep not balance, like to keep like our mental to keep our mind, basically to keep our mind, like this is the most important thing, because this is what we should focus on. And if like on a daily basis we are going to reflect on our habits and what we are doing, so slowly we'll be able to reduce these negative habits and to have less problems and afflictions.
But isn't that even more difficult when you're in a surrounding let's say, for example, you were an alcoholic and now you want to get rid of the alcohol, but you're still surrounded by all alcoholics around you. You're way more tempted to do it again. I find that way more difficult than, like, I'm not saying leave everyone behind and your family behind and everything, but maybe there can be like a switch where we really think about, is this person influencing me in a way that it increases my negative behavior? Like, I want to drink more because I'm influenced by these people. Like, you know what I mean?
The perna kerang ikarason pa insana, te perna milarepa na sincera te kaksure. Te kerang sarson pa impa. Ina niasauna te perna kersi soso yangi mite so te soso la shoken gen patena. Ani te komshi tele tarna, te komshi te me paswa te weekend te kakva chagires.
Lasa,
Perna soso yangi mite so te rapsi vaina. Ani te soso te arate pango samna. Ani te soso yangi mite so tanjelo machena. Te arapane te weekend te kakva chagires.
Resh, ngoni. Te ai ngoni tate ngeze te peti zawanyinin chopon rawatin nan rewa che kapo yo na sami kas che to yo na che na yashori ra kyoba marab kun rewa te che ka ze to ta te yo chin na so chen so na hondi so chopon rawa nam jin ro ron ro sa ma rewa che ko na kalin ro chin do che to na te yashori.
So, of course, if you can do it, if you can cut off relationship with these people, whether it's a friend or family, of course it's the best, right? But I just thought that it is very, very difficult, like, to do this type of steps, like to cut really relationship with one family or with one's good friends. It becomes very, very difficult and problematic. But of course, that if someone has bad influence on us, so it will be the best if we can really be distant from these people. Do you have like other class here? Do you have class?
No, we came to talk. We saw one Askamo, so we thought we could talk to someone here.
I
We
see.
just wanted to talk.
Kerang iti dala pepsa.
No one came.
No, I'm sorry, but we just about
That's
to
a
finish.
class that we are
Okay,
just having.
can we attend?
Of course you can attend, but it's
You're just
finished.
finishing.
Sorry, Konda.
finished already. Yeah, maybe you had the wrong.
Nga te check up battery.
It's until 5:30. I'm sorry.
We got lost.
Okay. So lam ka norson sa.
Nalas.
It's easy.
Konda.
Sorry.
Ninga sa shash. Ni so shaja kay tani.
Okay, so yeah, now we're going to wrap it. This class.
Ani chamra chita kyoso.
Yeah, please have tea. Please have water, tea. Kasi the kung you kerana te trio tango sam yesaresa.
Ani are maso.